All right, well, it's 1 o'clock on the dot. So thank you so much to all of our attendees and especially our panelists for joining our first virtual career panel of our Feed and Fuel Your Future Career virtual learning series. The Department of Education is thrilled to be partnering with education projects and our industry commodity groups to bring these virtual experiences into your classrooms. So thank you for joining us. Thanks for attending. My name is Cassie Palsgrove. I lead our Career Connections efforts at the Ohio Department of Education, and our team is thrilled to offer the opportunity for Ohio students to get a sneak peek into all the neat career pathways that the career field of agriculture has to offer. So our week one celebration here is focused on food science and food safety, and we could not be more thankful for the panelists that we've assembled here today to share with you a little bit about their career trajectory and how they landed in the spots that they're in here today. If you're viewing this event live, I'd love for you to use our Q&A function to interact with our panelists. Panelists will be monitoring the Q&A function for you, so if there's a live question that comes in from one of our viewers, we'll be sure to make sure that gets answered. If you're viewing this as a recording and you want to ask our panelists questions, please feel free to reach out to us at careerconnections@education.ohio.gov, and we'll get you connected to these great panelists that we've assembled here today. So I have the pleasure of introducing your moderator for today's panel, one of our teammates here at the Department of Education, Michelle Washington. Michelle comes to us with a great career background in talent development and talent acquisition from Nationwide Children's Hospital. And so she's just rounding out 6 months here at the department. So I'm going to turn our programming over to Michelle today, but thank you all so much for joining us for week one and our very first virtual career panel in our Feed and Fuel Your Future Career virtual learning series. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Cassie, and thank you all for being here today. Our panel consists of some professional careers that you're going to learn more about today. And so I'm going to have our panelists, first of all, introduce themselves. And we're going to start with Rebecca Singer. Rebecca, can you please tell us a little about yourself, including your title and your role?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rebecca Singer, and I'm the president and CEO of Sift, the Center for Innovative Food Technology. We're based in Toledo, Ohio, and we provide technical and business assistance to the food and agricultural industries across the state. And personally, I am also very actively engaged in agricultural production and take great pride in seeing some of the things develop from the field all the way to the plate, and looking forward to today's discussion.
Great, thank you so much. And Ernest, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself, title and role?
All right, you betcha. So my name is Ernest Caprero. I'm a chemist at Nestle's Quality Assurance Center in Dublin, Ohio. I work in the contaminants department, so specifically my job is testing for anything that you don't want in your food. We look for pesticides, toxins from molds, plasticizers from packaging materials, just about anything you hear in the news that shouldn't be in your food, we're looking for it to make sure it doesn't get into the food supply. Our lab is much bigger than just my lab, so we're also testing for everything that should be in food, be it fats or proteins or vitamins. We're watching out for microbes, so salmonella and listeria are big ones. And we're even checking for fake foods along the way, which until I worked here, I didn't know exist, but sure enough, people will try to counterfeit apple juice, among other things. So that's what we do in a nutshell.
Great, thank you. And Lyda, can you please introduce yourself?
Well, good morning. I'm Lyda Garcia, Assistant Professor of Meat Science at The Ohio State University in the Department of Animal Sciences. And I'm involved with a lot of the educational piece when it comes to meat science, involved with a lot of the, somewhat similar to what Ernest mentioned, you know, hopefully we're training our students so that they can go work for Ernest, right, Ernest? You want to be their boss. But, you know, we do work with fresh meats, you know, from all the way from start to finish. We work on food safety, we work on product development, and a lot of science. We do a lot of science here because with what we do, there's a lot of STEM, a lot of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But then we also provide some extracurricular activities such as a meat judging team where we travel nationwide and our students compete against other universities. It's pretty cutthroat competition, but the whole point is that it's on-the-job training so that our students who decide not to continue into extended education, such as graduate school, they're able to find a job in our meat industry, food industry.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. And then we have Dr. Fortner.
Hi, thank you for asking me to be part of this panel. My name is Dale Fortner. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources at Sandridge Food Corporation. We are a fresh food manufacturer that manufactures deli salads, and soups, and dips and dressing for the grocery store industry and also for the food service industry. And we, in addition to that, we have a plant that focuses on sous vide cooking of proteins and meats. And my background experience is primarily right now to develop people, career path minded people. So I have a high level overview of all the jobs that we employ here in our food industry. And then I shared with Michelle previously and some of the other panelists I've worked with that my former career was in education. I'm a retired superintendent of schools. And so I've got that unique perspective of looking from the educational perspective, and then the last 7 years from our private industry in the food industry, which is a great field for anybody that's interested. And if you're watching this call, I'm sure that's why you're here. So thank you for having me today.
Great. And then part of our planning team, we also have Tracy with the Ohio Department of Education. Tracy, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Tracy Denninger. I serve as an agriculture education program specialist as a contractor to the Department of Education through the Southern Ohio Educational Service Center. I supervise our ag teachers and programs in the state of Ohio and work with the FFA side as well. Thank you for having me and let me introduce myself.
Thank you, Tracy. And then we have Elizabeth with us. Elizabeth, can you kindly introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Marowski, and I work with Rebecca at Sift and manage a program specific for the credentialing process for food science and food technology classes. And we have a 3-point and a 12-point credential available that Rebecca will speak about. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to touch base with myself or Rebecca on our behalf of Sift.
Great, thank you. And so we're going to hear about our panelists, their backgrounds, and some of their backgrounds might vary. And so we're going to start out with Rebecca. Can you tell us how did you come to become the CEO of Sift, and what is your career pathway?
Well, I took a very interesting pathway, I would say, maybe to get to where I am right at this moment. I always knew I wanted to be involved in the field of agriculture. I grew up on a family farm. I'm currently partnering with my brother to run that farm to this day. And so it was just always one of those places in my heart that I wasn't sure exactly how I wanted to intersect. At the time when I was deciding to venture off and go into college, I actually at that time wanted nothing to do with the farm. I was a little overwhelmed. It was a lot of work. It was hard. I thought, oh, give me something else. But I have this understanding and this knowledge, so I'm going to go and apply that at The Ohio State University and do an ag business degree, because I was interested in business, but I thought maybe it would be kind of a niche opportunity to blend the two passions and still not be necessarily directly involved in the field. So I did pursue that, had a wonderful experience in kind of getting a broad perspective of what goes on in the agricultural industry. It wasn't until years later, after I graduated, I worked for the Ohio Department of Agriculture and really got introduced to a number of food processors in the state and ran our Ohio Proud program, which was to really highlight and showcase the breadth of what is being generated here in Ohio, which blew me away. I had no idea that there were so many good products that were coming out of here that were nationally recognized, and that we had people right down the road that were involved in a lot of those production facilities. So that piqued my interest. And then I had the opportunity to move on and accept a role at Sift, which was ironically very food science based. And when they brought me on board, I said, "Are you sure I'm the person you want for this position?" Because I didn't really have that element of my background. It was really focused on functional foods and nutraceuticals. And I, at the time, wasn't even sure what that meant. So I kind of took a leap of faith, recognizing that I was very intrigued in this. I found a passion that I kind of really didn't recognize at that time when I first started looking at what kind of career I wanted to have. And that was 19 years ago. So I have been involved with the organization since, and have really just kind of grown and evolved with what companies needed and where the opportunities presented themselves, and has now put me in a position of leading the organization, in which I'm very proud of in the fact that we are consistently trying to make a difference in the food and ag space. So probably it kind of, and now I am back on the farm, which ironically I did not think was ever really going to happen. But was in the tractor last night, and I think it's a breath of fresh air some days on doing that. It's kind of crazy, call me nuts, everybody at work does, it's fine. But it was kind of it comes full circle again now. But that's kind of how the progression was for my career path.
Great, thank you. And Ernest, can you tell us, how did you end up at Nestle as a chemist? And tell us about your journey.
Sure. And my path is probably equally convoluted. Coming out of high school, I knew I wanted a science career. I thought I was going to be a chemical engineer. That was what my father was. And, it was pretty cool after job tours there and all that. After a couple of years in college, though, I realized that the engineering half of things is so business oriented that it's a blend of science and profitability. And I just couldn't get behind the profitability. I loved the science, so chemistry was kind of nailed in for me there. I went on to pursue a PhD, only to find that the lab I joined was not a good fit for me. And so I actually went into industry at that point. I started making a leukemia drug actually for a while, and not a bad job, but also kind of limited. So I decided to try grad school again. And in grad school, I actually found that I enjoyed the teaching aspect of things. So I ended up with a master's degree in chemistry and teaching certification. And I went on to teach for a few years, which was amazing. And I'm very glad I did it. And I still miss I often miss that I'm not doing that now. So I always look forward to the chance to work with students like this even. But at the same time, I started a family and I needed more money. So I went back to chemistry. I got into the pharmaceutical industry again because I had experience there, and worked on generic drugs, some research, and then made a small shift over into bioanalytical research, which is a big name for basically animal testing of new drugs, new pesticides, all kinds of things. Anything that you want to do a food safety study on before it gets to market, it goes through that type of study. But at the same time, I'm not entirely comfortable with using animals as test subjects, and so that became an uncomfortable job for me. I ended up moving here to Nestle, and it's been an exciting job for me because Nestle is such a broad company. It's it's worldwide. We do all the testing for the United States and Canada and Mexico, and we even get samples from as far away as India and China, because we are Nestle's biggest lab in the world. So I see all kinds of foods. I see new products. I see new challenges because, when somebody develops a test method, they don't expect that, 5 years from then that somebody's going to come up with, hey, we're going to put this into a gummy bear and, make that a new way to deliver vitamins or something. And that changes everything as soon as that sample comes in. So it's a fun, very science-y environment to be in, and they give me lots of freedom to develop new projects. So I am very happy here.
That's great. And I'm going in this order for a particular reason, because as you can see from our panelists so far, sometimes you have a change of heart from the initial careers that you might have thought of. And so, Dr. Fortner, can you please go ahead and tell us, how did you become the Vice President of HR at Sandridge?
Well, similar to my other colleagues, my path was not typical, and it took a lot of different changes down the road. And I think people viewing it, my one message to you is there is no clear, definitive path for anyone. And I think that changes as you go through that. Going back to high school and those years, I wanted to play college sports. I wanted to play college football. I wanted to get a good education. So I ended up going to a liberal arts school, the College of Worcester. And I ended up majoring in something I was pretty passionate about and interested in, and that was English. So I was an English major with an emphasis and a concentration. I know this may sound a little bit odd for an ex-college football player, but British poetry was my area of expertise. And I wanted to do something with that, and I ended up going into education, and I ended up going into teaching and coaching, and I did that for about 8 years. But then I had a strong desire to show some leadership and went into school administration. And throughout my career, I went back to school and got the necessary credentials and got the necessary license and master's degree and certifications and became a principal. And then for the last 15 years, I was a superintendent. And I ended up with my doctorate degree and ended up moving on there. But after spending my first career in education, my wife and I are blessed with 5 children. We're blessed with 5 girls, and I needed to continue to work, and so I decided to change my career path again for another time, and had an interest in the food industry, and had an interest particularly in the food industry in the county in which I lived. Everybody likes food, it seems. I like food. I don't know if I constitute myself as a foodie, but had some conversations with people, and then used some of the skill sets that I believed I had and experiences I had, and came to Sandrich Food Corporation as a Vice President of Human Resources. And my job is to help people find their career path within the field, help develop and grow good talent, and understand how people can use their passion for food, their interest in food, or their interest in leadership or logistics or the sciences or accounting, because we have an accounting department and a marketing department and all those different things, and try to help people use their passion, use their skill sets to help our industry and help our company become better. So I've had that experience working on the executive level in education, and then now working on the executive level in the food industry. And it's been quite enlightening for me, and I've learned a lot, but hopefully I've also shared a lot with other people. And through today's experience, it's my desire and hope that the people watching will learn from this panel and take some jewels or some gems from the experience. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Garcia, can you tell us of your career journey?
Well, I was raised in a small town in South Texas, 40 miles east of the Texas-Mexico border. And I'll say that, in my county, in my town, we pride ourselves of the cowboy way, so I grew up working cattle, the same old movies that you watch about Texas, I'm going to say it's real. I worked cattle with my father. I team roped with my father. I barrel raced, but I also, and that was just a hobby that we did together. He was my best friend, and mother was my best friend too. But I was a bit ornery growing up. And so when I would get in trouble, I would have to help my mother in the evenings. She was a public school teacher who also taught GED at night, and also taught for a local community college as part of the amnesty program. The amnesty program was for migrant workers from Mexico who wanted to obtain their citizenship. She taught twice a week from 6:30 to 10. And so my punishment when I did get in trouble for ornery things was to go and help her teach math and Spanish, which I can't even do today. That was so long ago. But, you know, little did I know what she started. And my father was a Texas cowboy with a third grade level education who, you know, introduced me to agriculture. And again, little did I know what he had started. And of course, as time progressed, you know, I was in FFA in high school. I was very active. It just came so natural to me. But it wasn't until I started college, which, you know, I think a very common major or a pathway when someone starts in college in agriculture is we all want to be veterinarians. And so I had received a full ride to a junior college to judge livestock. I think I was okay at it. But it wasn't until I joined and meat judging basically is where you learn how to evaluate carcasses, beef, pork, and lamb as if you were a USDA grader for these meat packing plants. But then you also learn how to work as quality assurance in evaluating certain primal cuts, subprimals to assure consistency throughout the United States of products. It was then that I fell in love with meat judging, which then led into meat science. And since then, you know, I dropped livestock judging and I have been faithful to meat science, meat judging ever since. And Texas Tech University was a 10-year dream of mine, thanks to my brother-in-law. And so I was able to complete the 10-year dream. And then I was just going to stop there and go back to South Texas. But as, you know, sometimes our destiny is set, our fate is set, and things just start to unravel without us knowing. And then by the time I knew it, I was asked to coach a meat judging team at West Texas A&M that started my master's, which then I started to teach even more, but still stay in the world of meat science and livestock. And then I went for a PhD at Texas A&M University, where I also coached a meat judging team, but taught I couldn't even tell you how many undergraduate classes I was in charge of that, and then working with extension and producers that I just, without even realizing, I figured out that that's what I wanted to do, was to be a professor. Again, but it all stemmed back to my roots, my South Texas roots of, you know, something that was introduced to me by my mother as a consequence. Little did I know that that was the beginning of where my path was starting. So I was at Texas Tech University for 4 years as a visiting assistant professor, where I taught an undergraduate meat science class to non-ag majors, and that was intentional. I also traveled with our food safety team to Mexico and Central America in an attempt to make their meat supply safer. And then I also assisted our college in recruiting to help increase diversity. Then I stuck my neck out and left the state of Texas, my home. And here I am in Ohio, where I am, again, as I mentioned, assistant professor of meat science. And I'll tell you, leaving my home, leaving my comfort zone was the best thing I could have done to help me grow. And so I've now completed 5 years here in the great state of Ohio, again, where I continue to educate, not just our youth, but our parents, because as you know, they're just as important to include, especially, you know, when mom's not happy, you know, we're not happy. That still holds true today with our students. And so, yeah, so this is how I got here. And, you know, a lot of my students can tell you that I give them a lot of tough love. I tell them, you know, I let them know that my program is a safe space. We are going to make mistakes. We're not always going to agree. I'm not always going to be happy, but understand that everything I do comes from a very good place. And so now I serve in the role as a combination of my parents, my mother and father, all into one. I always said that even though my father had a third grade level education, he had a PhD in life. And that's where I'm able to take some of his lessons and pass along to my students. I don't have kids. I have a dog, a 10-year-old boxer who, you know, sometimes needs a little education every now and then, you know, but so my students are my kids. Very blessed to be here.
Thank you. Now, Rebecca, when we spoke, we made that connection between at Sift, manufacturing. How does manufacturing play a part in food science?
Well, it's quite fascinating because every item that we have at our disposal within a grocery store or wherever we're choosing to consume has to be made somewhere, and that's essentially manufacturing. SIFT is part of the Ohio Manufacturing Extension Partnership, so we really place the emphasis on making sure that people understand that there is a true science behind how we process and make our foods. Regardless of what kind of product it might be, there's a lot of intersections on being able to make sure that it's the highest quality and safest food product out there. We're very mindful and proud of that fact, and it is manufacturing. It's making products. It's getting all of the using all the resources available to us and connecting the supply chains together to be able to bring it to a facility and make what is a phenomenal end product. And there's so many different pieces that come into play there, whether it's you've got the marketing and individuals that are trying to determine what consumers are most interested in. They're a finicky bunch. Consumers are hard to anticipate what direction they're going to go and what they're going to like and what they're going to feel is the next trend. And so you have people that are out there trying to monitor that, and then you have the food scientists that are trying to deliver something that reflects that consumer preference. And then you have all the individuals that are involved in the operations to make sure that they can produce it in an efficient fashion. So it's really quite fascinating to see how these things evolve and where they go and what new things are taking place. From a manufacturing standpoint as well, there's all the other components, whether it's the food equipment being made here in the state that is then used in our food processing facilities, or most recently we've been engaged in some alternative sustainable packaging efforts to try to enhance what are the options available out there for putting the product into in a packaging perspective that consumers would appreciate and has an environmental application to it. So really it's all about just trying to bring all of those pieces and parts together to manufacture the best item at the end that's going to give all of us something to be proud of and particularly satisfied by.
And thank you for the work that you do. And Ernest, on the other hand, being a chemist at Nestle, can you tell us about some of the types of tests that you do in your lab?
Sure. So I think I mentioned we look at pesticides and mycotoxins, the toxins from mold, and plenty of other things that you don't want to find in food. And so we'll receive samples from factories and from raw material suppliers from all over the place. And that's all part of a monitoring program. So if you're looking at raw materials, you're sending in some raw corn or wheat or sugar or whatever else might go into food. And we're going to run that through our tests and make sure that it doesn't have anything toxic to the consumer at levels that are unacceptable. You may or may not know, like the EPA actually publishes lists of how much pesticide can be in various foods. So we have that on hand as we're doing our testing, and we can tell our customers then, our customers are the vendors and the factories, hey, don't use this material because it's got too much of whatever chemical might be out there. Glyphosate is a big one in the news. So that's a major service we provide. And then also the factories, although they do have safety protocols in place, they also want to do ongoing monitoring throughout the process. So as they're making foods, they may pull a sample off halfway through and send it over to our lab, especially to the microbiology lab, but testing for still things that they don't want to see there. And then when you have finished products, again, before you ship it off to market, you can do testing and make sure that it still meets all of the requirements to be safe food for the consumer. And by doing that, we make sure that we don't hurt anybody, of course, which is the number one priority. And we want to keep all of our consumers safe and happy. It also has business justification, of course, because if you do put bad product out there, then you're faced with recall situations. And when you're making thousands and millions of boxes of product or cans or whatever it might happen to be, if you have to pull all that off the shelves, then that's millions of dollars of cost that the company eats. So we're serving to keep both the customers safe from bad foods, and we're protecting the business interests for Nestle. And it's even kind of cool because they are very candid with us that we are not just a Nestle lab. We've opened our doors up to any company that wants to test their food for safety. So, say there's a small company out there that doesn't have its own lab, they can send us samples. And we don't view them as competition when it comes to food safety because we want to keep people healthy no matter what they're eating. It's generally good for business also. It's not just a public service, although that's the way that they sell it to us because we feel good about that. But on the business side of things, say ice cream is a big one for Nestle. Not as much now because we're kind of sharing that business off to another side. But looking at ice cream as an example, if one company out there has a recall for ice cream, most customers see that as ice cream in general is not safe at the moment. Even if you're rationally able to say, well, it was only this brand that had the problem, most people in their minds just think ice cream dangerous for a while, and then that hurts sales everywhere. So we're benefiting food science and food safety and also business at the same time, of course.
Thank you. Dr. Garcia, when we spoke, you spoke about some of the current misconceptions that you're seeing and trends in terms of students choosing a career path in meat science. What are some of those misconceptions and how are you educating or dispelling those myths?
Well, first of all, meat science is a very, very specialized area. This isn't something that every university in the United States would offer. Normally, for those who do offer a meat science program, you can most likely find them in the Department of Animal Sciences or Department of Animal and Food Sciences or Department of Food Science. And so with that said, one of our challenges is that for the few that do know about meat science, right away they'll turn to a butcher, someone, from a meat processor who just cuts meat. And, and which is, it's understandable, especially if we don't know much about the program. And so what I've done, at least here in the state of Ohio, since I've been here, is I will capitalize on my extension programs. And the last 2 years, I've really put myself out there through video and social media. I mean, my Facebook is no longer my personal Facebook, it's work Facebook. And so I'm constantly posting extension programs with my students and everything that we do just to try to educate as many as possible about what a meat science program is, what it consists of, and why it's relevant in agriculture. And so some of the misconceptions is, also is, well, what are some career paths in meat science? I don't want my kid to be a butcher. Okay, well, that's part of it. It's a fraction of it. And so I spend a lot of time talking about careers from government of USDA to even state government of, how Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, and so forth, all the way down to the producer. And so in my world, at least, education is key. Education is nonstop. It's, even if it's just as simple, if I see someone who recognizes me out at the grocery store, at Sam's Club, just actually yesterday, I ran into someone who I had not seen in about 3 years. I'm still educating, even on my off time, when I'm off the clock. But I'm also using my students. My students are, and I'll admit to this, our youth don't want to hear from me. I'm old, right? They'd rather listen to our own students because I've learned that, they would rather believe them than someone who's older, and they know what I want. But if our students come in and start recruiting and start talking to them about their experiences, positive and negative, this is how I've learned to recruit more. I've also reached out to the Department of Education. Tracy and I have worked together since day one. I think the first time we met, we were like, yeah, we're on the same page. And so I reach out to her a lot, as well as agri-science teachers. I include them with my programs. But once again, parents are very important in my role, in my position, because if we can get the parents, buy-in from the parents, it just makes it a lot easier to have these students enroll in our programs, again, to serve agriculture, the future of agriculture. So yeah, I would say that's what I would do, you know, short is a short answer if you want to refer to it as that. But yeah, just trying to get as many people on board. And again, who's willing to listen, because I'm known to, you know, place myself in places where I'm not even invited, and I'll just show up if I think it's a great opportunity. And luckily, you know, I get along with most people, so it works.
Right. Now, Dr. Fortner, you spoke, now that you're a VP of HR, can you tell us of some of the entry-level positions, some that may just require, whether it be certification, what are some of the entry-level positions that students can look, or if they're decided not to go to college in your industry?
Well, there are probably more positions and entry-level opportunities for students than they realize, and we could probably spend about a half hour talking about them, depending on the different industry. But anything that deals with food, anything that deals with food processing, food regulations, food making, food quality, you know, some of those things that Ernest talked about. We have all types of entry-level positions that deal with that. We have several people that have a culinary background and they do the R&D and they do the food preparation. But we also have all kinds of positions that any other industry, any other manufacturer would have. And that's something I think people need to keep in mind. You could have an interest in food, you can have a background in food, and you can work in a food-related industry, but then do something different. We have a chef who had a propensity to work with food, but then he also had a strong skill set and a strong interest in organization and efficiencies, and he is now our lead scheduler and forecaster. But his background and training was in that, but he used his other skills and his interest and skill with technology. But we have a sales department, we have an accounting department, we have a marketing department, we have a human resource department, and all of those have entry-level positions too. We have a logistics department. It's about production, it's about manufacturing. If somebody has an interest in that operations and manufacturing, but they also have that innate skill maybe to be a leader or to be in management, there are growth opportunities there. So I would say that in any position that you have in your current field, or maybe in young students' current interests, that's also applicable to the food industry, because we have similar positions. We're not just about making food and testing food and tasting food. We're also about delivering it and selling it and marketing it and doing all the different jobs that are related to that. So my I guess desire for students, if you have an interest in getting a ServSafe certification, great. If you are fortunate enough, as Elizabeth mentioned before, to be part of credentialing, I think those are all legs up that you can get on your resume to prep you in an easy transition into the food industry. HACCP certification, any other type of certification dealing with food is a thumbs up and is a plus. But don't let that limit you. I would say that if you have a background interest in food or working in that industry, you can do any other job from an executive in the food industry, where I am on an executive level, and all the way down to maybe the food production line. So don't let that limit you. The possibilities are far greater and far more than you probably know and you imagine. And then the next challenge is to go out there and explore and try to find those. And that's a arduous task. That's a tough topic about how do you learn about that, but that's part of the journey, is learning now about career paths and career opportunities, about what you want to do. But I hope that answers the question, but that'd be my first response to that.
Great. And Rebecca, you had mentioned some of the certifications that you had worked on. Can you elaborate on those?
Sure. So Sift was fortunate enough to work with actually some of the individuals here on this call, as well as others, years ago to develop 2 industry credentials. So we have a food industry associate and then a food industry specialist. And those are really geared towards high school students to be able to get a little bit more exposure to what goes on within food, maybe kind of explore some of the areas of interest and kind of just open their minds to some career pathways. With the associate level, there's 120 hours of training required and then 100 hours of hands-on experience. And that hands-on piece is really just to help you kind of get in there and see, is this for me? One of the best things I think I did in my college career was doing an internship just to get exposure with what it's like within a business environment that I thought I had interest in. And through that experience, I realized that really wasn't a place for me. I didn't find it to be quite as challenging and engaging as what I had hoped it to be. So it really kind of helped me make that decision before I really put a lot of time and energy in pursuing that pathway. So the idea behind the credential is to help give those hands-on experiences so that you can explore and use that time to really understand and see things in a different perspective. And then if you find that it's really still intriguing and you want to develop and build upon that, then we have another level, which is the food industry specialist level, which is 480 hours of training and 500 hours of hands-on experience. And we are here to help guide any teachers on what it would take to be able to deliver that curriculum. We're working on hands-on activities within the classroom to be able to bring new resources to the table, whether it's making yogurt or understanding how to read pH meters or any of the types of things that might be an interest to have within the classroom. We're here to help. And equally with students, if there's an interest and they think there might be something, but they're not sure where to go to try to get that experience and exposure, because of our connectivity to the companies around the state, we can probably point you in the right direction to someone that's in close proximity to be able to get that experience, whether it's through volunteering, whether it's being hired as an intern, or whether it's just kind of being a mentor and having somebody kind of take you under their wing and explain to you what is going on. So those credentials are something we're particularly proud of. We have a number of students that went through this process, and we're hoping to continue to align them with companies here within the state to continue to build on our expertise in our workforce. But it's here, it's available, and we're excited to be able to share that with any teachers that might have interest in pursuing that program.
Great, thank you. And Ernest, as a former high school science teacher, what advice would you give to teachers that may be looking at this program and may have students that are interested in pursuing a career path in food science as yourself? What advice would you give to them to encourage them?
So obviously you don't want to turn off your students from science in general. So that's keeping them engaged and happy is going to be an important part, because if you don't have a passion and a love for science, you're not going to want to go into food science or any other form of science. And when I was a teacher, both as a grad student, so teaching college kids, and as a chemistry teacher, that was one of the worst things I'd ever hear, was when a kid would come into my class and say, I hate science, or I had a terrible science teacher, so I don't like this field. So I do know that you want to avoid being that. So if you can give them a positive experience, you're setting them up for opportunities in the future. And I would say that curriculum actually is secondary to instilling a love of exploration and learning and problem solving and just digging for how things work. So if you can give your students a chance to explore, to actually delve into things on their own, that's a lot better than them just following a recipe or studying or getting the best grades on tests. If I were to think of an example I had, when I was a teacher, I dug up a lab off the web, and it was really simple. It was making fizzy Kool-Aid. It was something middle schoolers could have done, or elementary students or whatever. I was a high school chemistry teacher, so I used it with stoichiometry and had the kids calculating their baking soda and their citric acid in the right amounts to make the Kool-Aid fizzy. So great. But then their test, of course, was make it, see if it tastes right. That was a pretty good indicator. So if it tasted good, they did a good job. But then from there, Had they done it wrong, they could try again and get it right. But had they gotten it right the first time, they weren't necessarily done. They had the chance to explore. They could try different ratios. And so, sure enough, if they put a bit more baking soda than they should have, well, then they got a bit gassy and, you had kids belching all over the place, tasted a bit bitter, wasn't that great, but they were enjoying themselves because they were getting the experience. Go the other direction, too much citric acid, it's sour. And sometimes kids like sour, so they actually thought that that was the better product than the correct answer. But it was a day with a fairly simple lab because it's straightforward calculation. If they knew what they were doing, they could knock it out in a couple of minutes. Making the Kool-Aid doesn't take long, so they had plenty of time to try several different variations, share their advice with their fellow classmates, and really enjoyed the experience. So that was actually one of their favorite days of the year every year. It didn't seem to matter which one. So yeah, give them the chance to explore. And if you can, also tie it into the real world. If I was giving some lecture on, I don't even know what it would have been now, it's been years. But if I could, I'd tie it into my experiences in industry. Because I had worked in several labs, I knew, where this is actually useful, because students will always ask, when am I ever going to use this? Well, here's where it actually does get used in the real world. So it has that connectivity, and it's really beneficial at that point. Probably my best advice.
Great advice. And Dr. Garcia, you spoke of some of the credentialing and some of the opportunities, even at the extensions at Ohio State, the Ohio State University. I stand corrected. Can you tell us of any scholarships that may be available?
So before I get into scholarship availability, there's one thing that I want to share that most students don't know, that there are 3 levels for scholarships. One, you have, and the way I like to describe this is as bowl sizes. If you envision a big punch bowl, that punch bowl would be at the university level. So when students apply for scholarships, these are the levels, or tiers that how I like to explain. You have 3 opportunities for scholarships. One is at the university level, so that's that big punch bowl. If you add smaller bowls in it, in our case, we have envision 12 smaller bowls. Those smaller bowls would represent our colleges. And so there's your second opportunity for scholarships. Then within those 12 bowls, envision smaller bowls, and that represents the departments. Now, in my College of Food and Agriculture Environmental Sciences, we have 12 departments. So if you were to apply, let's say, for a meat, for an animal science or some kind of an agricultural scholarship, you would start at the university level to see if in the general pool, based on your GPA and your standardized test scores, if you qualify for anything there. If you don't, then you have an opportunity at the college level. So like in my case, in the College of Food and Agriculture Environmental Sciences, as a general agricultural scholarship, you have an opportunity there as well. And even if you do get the college scholarship, your packet is still going to be sent to the department level. And if anywhere in your essay or anywhere do you mention meat, guess who they're going to call? They're going to call me, and they're going to say, review this packet and tell me what you think usually we'll review for scholarships. It would be in the spring. I believe the deadline is roughly around February 1st, and by April we're starting to look at scholarships. So once again, you have 3 opportunities. There are times that you can get all 3. There are times that you'll get 2 out of the 3, and times you'll get 1 out of the 3, and that's usually going to be at the departmental level. And so with that being said, our Ohio State University offers a scholarship page. So you can just go to Google, you can type in The Ohio State University with a plus sign and then scholarships, scholarship availability. And there will be a list, a long list for science, some for engineering, some for agriculture, some for music and arts, some for veterinarian, pre-vet. The sky's the limit, some just for women. Things like that. And so I would start there at the university page. And then if you really are interested in a certain college, so again, I'm going to use agriculture, you can go to the CFAES page and just Google CFAES, Ohio State scholarships, and that'll take you to our main page. And then there's a list of scholarships provided by our college. And then if you really want to get down and dirty, you know, down, like I said, meat science, type in meat science, the Ohio State University, and even in our departmental webpage, there's a list of certain scholarships available. So, so there's a reason why I describe the bowls as from university down to departments, because at each level, there are opportunities in different lists based on our donors. Sometimes we have donors who want to, you know, supply funding to our students based on their passion. So we have donors who want to do animal science, nutrition, you know, there are specific scholarships for that. So I would start with that. I would also recommend, especially for teachers, you know, Coca-Cola is really big in giving scholarships. Ford, Chevrolet, you know, the sky's the limit. Maybe Nestle has something there, or Sift, you know, but really and truly, I mean, there's just so much out there that, as when I was young, you know, I had to just go to just general and just scholarships. Now my area was more in agriculture. You know, I just went general and just see what, and I applied for Coca-Cola and Ford, you know, things like that. So yeah, I would, and if you have questions, especially, you know, in my field, don't hesitate to reach out. I mean, this is why we're here, to help guide you and to set you up to succeed, not to fail. And if I don't know the answer, rest assured, I will send you to someone who does.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Dr. Fortner, when we spoke, you're quite big on growing talent. And so what advice would you give to students thinking of going into a career in food science?
I would just strongly advise them to continue to explore the options and the job opportunities for them down the road in the future. If they have a passion, they have an interest in food science or meat science or any type of sciences dealing with that, as they get their degree, as they get their certification, as they get their training and classes, then work hard with industries to try to find out more about what those job opportunities are out there. But the first thing I would tell them is just get your first job. Just get your first job and don't worry about the rest. We all had to get our first job. And then once you get your first job, you'll be able to understand the industry, understand the field, explore more of what's out there. You don't have to get a job. And I think that some of the stresses that are facing students today, they feel like they have to get a career job right off the bat. Whenever they finish their 2-year degree or 4-year degree or their certification, someone feel I want to get a job and that's going to be my career job. And I would highly advise them, and many people on this panel, we didn't have just one job. We didn't start with one job and stay with one job. So it's get your first job, and from there, explore the different opportunities. As long as you're passionate about what you are studying, as long as you like to do what you want to do, you can then find out more about the different opportunities and the different jobs within the field. I think what Rebecca said before, the internships are valuable. She learned a lesson from her internship, job shadowing. If you can do that, very much so, do that, do an internship. That'll help you find your way. And it's going to be a journey. You've got 30, 40 years to work, so it's going to be a journey. And I think I would just encourage you first, if you're studying something you like, then work on getting a job within that field. And then after you get your first job, then you can figure out where your skill sets lie, where your interests lie. You'll probably find out a lot more about what's out there and what job opportunities are out there for you then to advance and to get settled in on something you want to do for a long period of time. That would be my advice to those young people out there today.
Michelle, if I may, I mean, Dale brought up a very good point. Cargill, I work a lot with Cargill, our large scale meat packer on the protein solution side, and they have a 10-20-70 rule. And that's to say that their employees who join Cargill, they admit that 10% of their knowledge will come from their formal training. 20% of what they learn New knowledge will come from working with their peers, their other employees, but 70% of the knowledge they're going to learn is going to be on the job. So Dell, I'm really glad you mentioned that because, as someone who was a student way back when, I was one of those who stressed about getting it right the first time. And if I could go back to my younger self, I would say, relax. It's all going to work out because it always does, right? So Dale, thank you for mentioning that. Ohio State does require a minor and for our students to take minors, and an internship is mandatory. And if they don't do an internship, then they can do undergraduate research. So that's one thing I have to brag about Ohio State University is, yeah, we're on it. So internships and research are key.
And if I could add to that, I think that's wonderful because I run across people today who are 28 years old and they're still trying to figure out what they want to do, even at 28. And sometimes it's unfair to ask a high school 18-year-old, what do you want to do? What do you want to study? What's your career? What do you want to be? And I know 28-year-olds that still haven't figured it out. So I think that path is one that grows. I think that path is one that is a progression, and it's done through that experience, that exposure. The more experience, exposure, inside look, opportunities students can get, the more it's going to help them. And they won't feel so pressured to make that decision that they feel is so critical. I've got to figure out what I want to do. No, you really don't. You don't right now. You have to figure out a field that you like, that you enjoy, that you want to work in. Work's hard. So, we want you to enjoy when you're at work. So find that first job and find that first area and then do some more exploration. But a lot of that, the more you can do earlier, the better.
Great. I think Rebecca wanted to brag about a scholarship also that SIFT offers. Can you go ahead, Rebecca?
Yeah, I just put that in there so that anyone is kind of what Dr. Garcia was talking about with the department scholarships and the unique opportunities within layers of the university. Through the work that we've been able to pull together with our credential, we have strong partnership and relationship with Ohio State's Food Science Department. And so they've stepped up and have said that if a student has a credential and they're very interested in furthering their career with regards to food science, that they would offer a scholarship opportunity as well. So it's a nice partnership. You never know where these opportunities are going to come from. And that's what I fully agree with, keeping your eyes wide open and really pursuing all sorts of different angles, because people are really interested in helping to support these efforts, and the scholarship opportunities and the interactions are available. Just ask and reach out, and don't be afraid to do so, because one lead may lead to 10 additional ones that's going to help you further your desires.
Great. Where do you see the future of the food science industry, Ernest, if you don't mind? I know we're going to wrap up, but if you can just.
Sure. So food science and food safety are evolving. I think it was it maybe Rebecca earlier mentioned that consumer preference is constantly driving where the food industry is going. And so as technology evolves and dietary desires evolve, you see new product development constantly just happening. We have one food safety lab in North America, but Nestle has multiple product development labs across the nation, across the continent, all around the world, because it is so important that we come out with that next line of wonderful canned coffee, or the newest health beverage, or the newest nutraceutical, because we've gotten into that field. And even as regulations change, you may be familiar with hemp. All the cannabinoids have become something that are now hitting the food market. And so there's a whole new world of product development out there. So that's a vast reach that never ends, because there's new technologies constantly hitting, which means, every new technology, every new possible nutritional thing that comes out there, you're going to get 20, 30, 40 products out of that. And so you have an ever-growing market of new products. And then in my lab, that means an ever-increasing number of things that we have to be able to test There's new hazards that get discovered. So, maybe there's a chemical that we didn't know was toxic 20 years ago, but we just found out it is. A good example is glyphosate. Glyphosate was, that's Roundup. It was a pesticide that people generally recognized as safe. And now people think it might be a cancer-causing chemical, and nobody wants it in their food. Everybody's testing for it. So we had to develop a testing protocol, and that's now something we're testing for very routinely. And that's happening constantly too. I specialize in the mycotoxins, the toxins produced by molds. So especially anything grown in the field is susceptible to mycotoxins. And historically, we've looked at a few specific ones, especially in animal feeds, but it's an evolving field also. There are so many new hazards that people discover, so new families of fungi and mycotoxins out there that people want to monitor for now, and people are passing regulations about that just were not a concern 10 years ago. So it's an ever-evolving space, and it's exciting to see it all come out. It's also a little scary. You hear about all these things that you probably were eating that were poisoning you, but that comes with the field. And sometimes ignorance is bliss. But if you like knowledge, this is a great place to be.
Great. I'm going to ask each of our panelists, what nugget would you want to give to students that are interested in a career in going into your particular fields? So I'll start with Rebecca.
My advice would be, if you have a passion for food or agriculture, and you have a desire to learn, because it is ever changing. There's always so many new things. In my job, what excites me is that no day is the same. There's always something different coming to us. There's different requests, there's different opportunities, and we also have we can also explore where we think what might be next. So if you have a passion for it and you have a desire, certainly follow through with that. And if you step into a position or an experience and it just isn't quite the right fit, don't completely disregard it, because there's so many different angles, as Dale talked about and others on the panel have. There's so many pieces and parts to the food industry that I'm sure you'll be able to find a fit. So kind of keep your eyes wide open. If you're interested and passionate and have a desire to learn, there's certainly the food industry is a place for you.
What nugget would you want to give to students, Ernest?
Well, I'm thinking about it, and the one that really comes to me is that since you're studying right now, one thing I've sometimes seen with my students in the past, especially when I was at the college level, a lot of students are focused on getting the best grade they can. And then as soon as they're done with the class, they say, all right, I did it. Now I can go on to the next one. And they kind of let the knowledge that they learned go, or even just, test by test. You'll hit the test, you'll get the A on the test, you're done. That's the wrong way to go about things. So yeah, great grades are great, but retaining what you learn is a lot more important. So as far as what's going to benefit you in the future, if you get B's and C's in your chemistry class or whatever, but you remember what was in your chemistry class because you paid attention, you practiced, you used it as often as you could, you linked it to your future classes, you've developed a more valuable skill set than somebody who got an A+ on every single test but never thought about it again and can't apply it down the road. And that's going to be true with your classes, your jobs. Every time you learn a new skill, that's something you're putting into your pocket to use in the future. And you never know when it's going to benefit you. But, I was a teacher for a while. Now I'm working as a chemist. Most people wouldn't think those were related, but we hire in somebody new. I'm one of the best people around to train them. And nobody was expecting that, but sure enough, it's come in really handy. I worked in the pharmaceutical industry. We don't make drugs here, but a lot of those skills translate. And I've been able to, take some of the quality practices we had there and really streamline things here. So again, past experience doesn't look related, but I was paying attention. I was always, remembering and bringing it with me. Everything you bring along makes you a better employee wherever you go.
We did have a viewer ask our panelists some questions here. How can high school students connect with employers and universities to shadow if they are really interested in the field? So any advice that you could give to our educators or to our students about how to connect with any of you in your industries on scheduling some type of a job shadow or a campus shadow? Any advice you have on that would be helpful.
I can speak to at least my input from that. I think I have 2 3-word phrases I would share with the entire group: students, school districts, school leaders, teachers. Find a way and invest the time. We have to find a way to get it done. We have to invest the time to make it happen. These are critical parts that everybody has a vested interest in helping students find their right path. Students have to find their own path and invest the time to build talent, recruit talent, bring people to the food industry, get that job shadowing experience. So I think a little bit is on everybody. I think companies need to reach out and afford themselves the opportunity to entertain and to host interested parties. I think colleges can develop partnerships and relationships with manufacturers to get college-age students who are closer to a career path and a career decision and get them exposed to internships or site visits. And we do that with the Ohio State University, Dr. Garcia, and some of the food science people. And then even the career tech organizations, the career tech, and also the students themselves to reach out. We have to find a way to close that gap. There is a gap, and that experience, that exposure, that internship, that site visit, I think will help market and market industries, market job opportunities. And I also think it'll help students start to think a little bit more diligently about that. So I don't have a clear answer for you, Cassie, but I think one thing that we have to do, we have to collectively find a way to make that happen. We have too big of a gap. We know that it exists. We send students to college, they decide on a major, then they figure out what they want to do. Or we send students to career tech schools, and it might be for a specific field like advancement to nursing, but there are 15 to 20 other career jobs under advancement to nursing that they could go into, and I don't know that we always do our best at exposing that. So that's just my little advice that I would answer for that question, Cassie.
Well, and at least on the university side, we welcome tours from the university to colleges to even departments. And a lot of our students will, if they know us, at least in my role when I'm out in the public with so many different people, they'll use me as the entryway. And if we can do it here in the department, I usually arrange a tour of our department, of our meat laboratory, some of our livestock facilities, and with other professors, but most importantly with our students. That's who's going to sell our story. But our college is really good at giving tours. So just so you know, I believe it was Pam who asked the question, don't hesitate to reach out to whichever university it is that you're interested in, because that is so common to give tours, because not every university offers a recruitment plan. Some people, some jobs are created for people just to recruit. We don't necessarily have that. So we rely on a team effort here. And I'll tell you, I mean, if I hear just the word meat in any conversation, I'm there, and I'm going to pull you in to try to get you in our house to, in which I've started the last 3 years with a lot of FFA chapters, a lot of high schools. So don't be afraid to reach out to us. As far as shadowing, I think I'm one of the few, I'm not too confident, but with every extension program that I have, I bring students with me, and as I'm there with our youth, our high school, and even junior high, and the kiddos as well, because we can't forget about them either, I bring them next to me. Sometimes I know I have that bulldog face, that look, but I'm a big kid at heart. I mean, I really have to admit to that. But that's also my way of trying to get them in to say, hey, you can actually be doing this. And as far as, with the industry, it's unfortunate I don't work with anybody on this panel, but with my field, I do work with Cargill, Tyson's, JBS, Smithfield, and we have created some type of articulation with them. So I'm constantly sending our students out of state to go and explore something different than just their county, their state of Ohio, and going just to see the world, because one thing we need to remember is that education does not stop in the classroom. It's always that hands-on piece. So, and in listening to my colleagues here on this panel, I'm very interested in connecting with you all, because every single one of you has a role in my world that I think that we shouldn't just stop with where we are. I mean, again, corrupt them all, right? Together.
I'll just add to, we have a Northwest Ohio Cooperative Kitchen, which is a location where we help entrepreneurs establish food businesses. And it's an easy place for us to kind of take, to do some tours similar to what was just described as well, as kind of that first step. It's a very small reflection of kind of what food processing is all about, but there's no one better than some entrepreneurs that are incredibly driven to get a product on the store shelves to really inspire somebody. I tend to go down there when I'm having a rough day just to talk to them, because their energy is amazing. And it's an opportunity just to see a little bit of how that goes in the food space and what they're thinking about and how they're managing it. And then also, you know, like I said, we would be happy to, if there's a teacher or a student that's interested in trying to connect with the food company in close proximity, to try to either explore some opportunities for a tour or a discussion or an interaction there, feel free to reach out to us, because those are all over the state. So it doesn't matter where you're located, we can probably find someone that can accommodate that need and really give you some exposure in a unique capacity. So it's always, there's nothing better than seeing it firsthand, in my opinion. Anytime you're able to go and experience things, that's what's going to last a lifetime. So if there's an ability to do so, then I certainly encourage it and would be happy to help facilitate it.
Well, thank you to all of our panelists. You are all amazing, and thank you for your willingness to help our students. So with that being said, I know we're past the time. Thanks again, and I'll turn it back over to Cassie.
Yeah, and we'll make this a really quick wrap up. Thanks so much again to our panelists. It's very interesting to hear the common thread of changing career passions and trajectories. So for all of our students watching out there, if you're not quite sure what it is you want to do when you enter the workforce, by all means, think about all of the different jobs that you've heard here today and the careers that you could really pursue in food science and safety. We know that the industry would love to have you, and you would bring a unique perspective to this group. So thank you all again. And students, please be sure to check out the other career pathways that food science has to offer. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you.
One more reminder, we do have an additional career panel next week and 2 more after that. So keep checking back here at 1 o'clock on Thursdays for our additional career panels. Take care.
Bye.